Hey, what's up everyone, TNRI here. Today we are in Rotterdam, Netherlands at the warehouse of BAQME. Today with me, Souren, he is the co-founder of BAQME. He can tell you a bit more about the business.
Sure, thank you. Thank you guys for doing the interview, appreciate it. So BAQME is a mobility sharing platform. In principle, like many others, except for one thing, we do specifically box bikes, electric box bikes. There's a lot of different mobility sharing vehicles out there, obviously the scooters and the bikes, which you guys do yourself, super popular. But we thought there's a missing link out there, right? And that happens to be the box bikes. And there's a very specific demand for people to use box bikes. Some you want to use it regularly, others want to use it sporadically. And we believe mobility sharing is a great way to solve that issue, especially for people who don't readily have access to a box bike, which are quite a lot actually. But there's a ceiling for box bike, obviously, like for other vehicles as well, which is 500 in Rotterdam. We intend to get to that as soon as possible. So we have expansion plans already for this summer. So we originally started with 20 because we wanted to try out the pilot, and that was a success. So we expanded now to 40, and the next expansion will be several hundred.
You yourself, you were born here.
Actually, I wasn't born here. I was raised here. So I was originally born in Armenia. But I mean, I was very young when we moved out. I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old. So I remember a little bit from that time, but not a lot. So I just really grew up in the Netherlands. Actually, I grew up very close to Rotterdam. There's a city next to it called Schiedam. So I know the area pretty well. So that's how and I've been living here since then. I grew up here. I mean, I went to school here. I studied here, and I worked here basically. My dad is an entrepreneur, or was an entrepreneur. He's retired now. He did actually something that I'm trying to get rid of, which are cars. He was selling cars. So he brought all the cars into the city, and now I'm trying to get rid of them. So that's kind of a funny paradox there. But he's been an entrepreneur his whole life technically. Even back in Armenia, he was selling. He had factories. He was selling different products, consumer products. And when he came over to the Netherlands, he continued that path. So maybe that's where the entrepreneurial spirit comes from. Although funny enough, I never did really entrepreneurship. When I was young, I did some little side gigs, like every young kid tries to do sometimes, and it was like selling video games, or like back VHS. Back then you had VHS still. That's very long time ago.
It's been a while.
But I never really went through it. I had a pretty corporate life, to be honest, the first 10 years of my professional career. But I always had in my mindset I wanted to do something. So at some point I just made the switch, which was in midsummer last year, and I went for it.
Yeah, because you went to the Erasmus Business University, which is like, I guess, the best university for doing business as well.
Yeah, for business it's definitely a great one. I did international business administration there as my bachelor's. And I did 2 masters in strategic management and finance investment. So I was really lining myself up for a corporate life. That was a great school to be. It was what I really liked about it was the international aspect to it. Because in there you can do BA, you can do the regular BA, you can do the international BA. Then you're working with international students, which I love a lot. So that they came back with this happens to do with my background. I appreciate working with talking to other cultures and stuff like that and people. So I did my exchange, for example, in Copenhagen. And actually the last 2 years I was working in San Francisco. Travel around a lot.
Yeah, because you have a pretty extensive experience with this in the big firms like Deloitte, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, Rabobank.
Yeah.
You're going for it.
Yeah, I mean it's not the most straightforward path to end up in mobility sharing, I would say. But it's actually, for me, it just makes a ton of sense because, I did a professional life. So, I was mostly working in investment banking, doing M&A transactions and IPO. I was raising capital basically in the beginning, large companies, and more recently, more for startups and scale-ups, especially when I was living in California. And, that inspired me a little bit more to follow my own dream of wanting to be an entrepreneur. And I happened to have the idea for BAQME since maybe like 3 years ago, maybe like since 2017. Back then it wasn't mobility sharing necessarily. It was more like, hey, people need these bikes, but they don't want to buy it and they don't want to use it every day and they don't have the space to store it. So how can we solve that problem? Can we do some kind of rental business, you know? And that kind of developed into something more over the years, and which is basically the concept that we have right now.
What was that trigger to move from the corporate life to more to the startup?
That was one that was a funny one. It was actually very. I don't know if you ask most people in investment banking, they always dream of the day that they quit. Not to say that investment banking is not good. It's a great way to learn things and learn it quickly. But you know, sometimes people just get stuck into their job and they want to do it and they just never think about new things and they don't want to take the risk of moving away. For me, when I started, I really had in my mind like, okay, the real trigger for me would be when I have a kid, and because then I feel like that's because you know, you don't know if you guys know, but like investment banking are very long hours, like 80-90 hours per week is regular, and weekends work is very regular. So if you have a kid, I thought to myself, that's something I don't want to give up. You know, I want to be there for the kid. So it kind of I never thought about it again until last year. I had a kid, and she basically a month before she was born, that kind of tricked me, and I just decided to overnight basically to quit. Obviously, I had BAQME in my mind. I had something that I wanted to do, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna start BAQME and I'm gonna just go for it. I just felt more like, okay, it's enough now. I want to be there for the kid. I want to experience all the first stuff in the beginning. In hindsight, I might have regretted a little bit because it was tough. I would say maybe tougher than investment banking. But no, overall I'm very happy to have done that.
But I guess with that experience, you were able to really, because you officially started in August 2020, and like it was like really fast paced to launch it.
Yeah.
I guess all the experience helped on that, to get the funding, get the people on board, and all that. Yeah.
So I think like in terms of work experience of actually becoming a professional in something, and I don't want to classify myself in anything, but I think investment banking might be the best. Maybe one of the best jobs to do for a young student or a new graduate, at least 2 or 3 years, to really get sort of like that professional mindset in you, and then later on you can decide what to do, whatever. So I think there's a lot of successful people out there who originally started in either investment banking or maybe like consulting, were very high performance, dynamic jobs where you learn things very quickly. So yeah, I think that experience has helped me tons, especially the last 6 years at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, where you work with, you basically work with very highly motivated, driven people, and your clients are the same, right? There are C-suite executives, so they're people, very smart people. They've accomplished a lot in their lives. You pick up a lot of stuff from that.
And your co-founder Sven,
yeah,
he was studying also the same uni as you. So is that when you met, or?
No, I know Sven even from high school already. So yeah, I know Sven almost maybe like 15 to 20 years, something like that. I forgot. So we basically met in high school, first year in high school, and then over the years we kind of grown to each other. Actually, he is the real entrepreneur among us. He never really worked at a corporate. He's been ever since some studies he did, he has his own company which is specialized in web design and social media marketing, etc. And he's also helped a lot of companies like startups grow their business, helping them with all the technical aspects. So yeah, he's a very valuable co-founder for me because he brings a ton of experience that I don't necessarily have.
And I guess the third piece of the puzzle is the Berenice, who was in the Uber and Jump and all that.
Yeah. Berenice, we're super happy to have her with us. So basically, we started in August. Sven and I started it, and in a few months afterwards, we got in touch with Berenice, and we really wanted her to come on board, and she was also super excited by the idea because. Because of her experience, so she was head of operations with Uber in Belgium, but also she done a lot of starting the business of Lime in Rotterdam, of the Lime back then the jump bikes. So she knows a lot about what's going on with there and what happens in mobility sharing, especially the operations bit. So we were super happy to have her with her, and on top of that, that's a great plus, I think, which we should have a lot more in mobility sharing. She's a female co-founder. And we still don't have a lot of that, unfortunately. And I'm a big fanatic. I try to push it a lot. Sometimes I do it maybe too much, but I think it's important to pay attention to that.
with you having a family and having a startup and all that, so how's the whole life balance going on?
I mean, it's not easy. So I live in Amsterdam, but we still have our business in Rotterdam. At least for now, we'll have more cities in the future. So a lot of back and forth. So only just the travel time that you lose from going back and forth, that's painful. But I mean, you just compensate for it. What it means is like waking up early in the morning, so you can be back in time to put your kid to bed, and have great communication with your partner in terms of who does what and when, right? Because kids bring a lot of responsibility, obviously. So you just need to plan. That's all you need to do, and then it works fine. And I think the experience that I've had with investment banking kind of helps a lot here again. Not minding to work long hours, not minding to stay awake long, but it's very manageable. You just have to plan it very well.
And do you have time for the you time? When you just no family, no business, but just you.
Oh yeah, you have to make time for it. Although I feel like you need to also you need to make sure that it's the right moment that you take the you time. So, like for example, the state that we're in now. There's weeks that I was like, okay, I cannot take you time now because it's very important to push now. But then there's some weeks where it still might be important to push, where you feel like okay, now is really you time, and it's just like a feeling you have at some point. Okay, I haven't really seen my wife for I haven't talked to her really for a few days. I mean, we see each other, we don't really sit down and talk for hours, or I haven't really spent hours with my kid, stuff like that. Those are real good triggers to make sure that you take you time, which is very important because you get to clear your mind and get back to work again. And especially when you're doing work like this, which is both a lot of thinking and a lot of manual labor as well, it's very important to make sure you take that time for yourself.
And then how do you make important decisions in your life?
Right now, it's a lot of gut feeling. You have to, on the one hand, you have to understand when you make those decisions, you have to understand your shortcomings. So don't be afraid to acknowledge them, but also be very confident in yourself in terms of what you do is the right way. So when we first started this, I had a notion, and we talked with Sven a lot about it. Okay, what would we need to do? Which places do we need to put the bikes? And these are decisions to make, right? Because we have limited bikes available to cover Rotterdam at this point. So we have to make smart choices to make sure that bikes are used. So you can use a lot of data and analytics, but a big part of it is also feeling and just believing in your theory. So you have to be able to push for that. So I think it's just, at the end of the day, making decisions is a lot of gut feeling, a little bit of analytics on the side, but yeah, and then just believing in what you chose to do and keep doing it.
What would be your advice to uni kids or the people who work the corporate job but they want to do entrepreneurship?
I think it's important to, follow your gut feeling. Because I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what's going to get you out of it if you want to get out of it. And that's what's going to make you a success if you become an entrepreneur. You have to follow your gut feeling. You have to be a little bit stubborn, right? Obviously, you have to listen to people, but make sure you're stubborn at the right moments, obviously. And then just continue your own path. I think that's the only thing I would say, because for me, that was in the end what happened, right? I could have made a very rational decision, time it exactly. Okay, I need to quit banking now. Obviously, I'm going to use a ton of salary. I'm going to have no money, no income for a long time. Okay, do I have to wait until I have some money saved? All these things, you can think about it forever. But in the end of the day, the decision that I made was purely overnight. I want to quit my job and I want to do something else, right? And I want to go become my own entrepreneur. And I just did it, and I didn't think about it twice. And that's the second thing I would say. Once you hit that spot, make sure you execute on it immediately, because you might talk yourself out of it. Alright, so I would say follow your gut feeling and execute on it.
Thanks for watching, and I hope that brought you some value. Like or follow on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or any other podcasts you use. And as always, TNRI out.